service. We want to say that the life groups for May 6th have been canceled. That is inaccurate information that we had got. And also the One Active for Christ event on May 6th that was supposed to be at my house. I kind of mixed that up. No, that's going to be rescheduled for another time as well. I'm not sure. Do we know when that's going to be rescheduled for? Okay. So on April 22nd is the wedding shower for Jeannie and Kevin, and they're registered at that on Walmart dealers. April 28th, Men's Work Day. If you weren't here on the last Men's Work Day, you missed a blessing. I tell you what, that was kind of fun throwing stuff away and burning stuff. Was it not, guys? Yep. We just haven't felt the wrath of the ladies yet because they haven't seen what we burned. So, April 29th is going to be a special day here. We're going to have a video here in a little bit. You saw about World Missions Offering. Brother John was going to speak a little bit about it. That's a special day where we try to raise money to support people like Jamie Lane, Pastor here a few weeks ago. And I ask you to be thinking about it, be praying about it, and be thinking about what God's going to lay on your heart to do that day. And then we have a baby shower for this Saturday. And that will be coming up. You'll see all the details there. So we're looking forward to that day. Why don't we all take a moment and say hello. If you haven't seen somebody walk in the big hood, welcome on the cross.
Good morning.
Good morning.
All right, that's pretty good. Good morning.
Good morning.
That was better. What have I got here in my hand? Here's anybody know? Pocket knife. But it is a special kind of pocket knife. Anybody know what that is right there? Huh? Well, it's a survivor, but it's called a, in fact, that's exactly what it is, but it's a Swiss Army knife. Swiss Army knife. That's the flag of the Swiss. It's kind of funny if they have a knife and they don't even ever fight. They just kind of say they need to. But they have a Swiss Army knife. It's got a Carl Ellerton from Switzerland. He had a son that was in the army, and his son always griped he didn't have everything he needed when he had to go out in the field. So he designed a knife that had just about everything on it. There's different kinds of it. I want to show you some of the things that's on this one. It's got on the very end, this is a Phillips screwdriver. This right here is a handle. Okay? Let's see. It has got a knife. Yeah. It's got a fingernail file. It's got a regular screwdriver. Man, keep going. What in the world is this? Scissors. Let's see, what else? This one has something that's extreme. It has a pen. It writes. It's cool. It's got just everything you might need. So, what was that? It's even got a line. My gosh, this thing is cool. What's it say? Anybody know what that says? Ginger Lester is ginger. It's mine, man. It's cool. I like it. It's got everything we need. In fact, some Swiss Army knives have a fork on it, a spoon on it. So they got every kind. It has got all you need when you need it. You know what? We have got somebody that has all we need when we need it. His name is Jesus. It's God. You're exactly right. It is God. We've got a God that will provide everything for us when we need it. All we have to do is ask. Isn't that awesome, man? We just sing it's so awesome, God. And awesome. This is an awesome night. It's got everything I need. We also have God that's awesome. We'll take care of all our needs. Okay? Think about that when you think, I don't got nothing to do that. I don't know who's going to help me. I don't know. You've got God. Okay? Thank you for your attention. I'm going to ask my dad to do some prayer.
On rock like you are awesome God. You meet her every year. All we have to do is look to you. All the prayer. You children. Think of our love and we pray for you. Lord, we come to you again and we're thankful for all the things in life that you allow us to take God. Thankful to you, Father, for your love and your Holy Spirit as well as comforts us when we need you. Father, thankful to you we can go to you without offering anytime we need you. Father, I pray this morning that we take up this offering and give back a little portion of what you've given us. We pray, Father, that you give us wisdom. Use it in the way that you have helped us. We pray, Lord, in your name, that this thing in Christ.
Jesus' name. But I am glad to be with you this morning, and they've asked me to kind of talk to you a little bit about the World Missions Offering. And let me first begin by saying how much I really appreciate the fact that you guys are participating. It is something, for some time we discussed, between myself and International Missions, we discussed, the difference between World Missions Offering and Acts 1:8 and how confusing it might be. So let me just tell you, this is a joint effort. It's something that we're doing together. Because what we want to do is we want to promote the gospel of Jesus Christ to other lands. And it's something else that needs to be, that we need in a bad way, especially now. Because if you kept your pulse on international missions especially, you know that we've had some struggles financially with the downgrade in the economy and those sorts of things. What generally happens across the board is this. Generally, if a church has some financial problems, they generally start scratching things off their budgets. And when they scratch things off their budgets, usually the first thing that they look at is giving outside of their own church. They begin to start trying to protect themselves and that sort of thing. And then ultimately, when they begin to look outside, generally what is beyond their own community begins to get scratched first. And so you can see where this takes us. So that's what's happened in the past year or so. The giving for international missions has declined tremendously to the point where they're at a dangerous level. That's the bad news, which that ought to be bad enough, right? But let me give you some good news about us in Arkansas. I do believe that we have been affected by the economy. I don't think that there's any doubt about that whatsoever. You probably know someone in your family that has lost their job, or friends or family, whatever, that has lost their job. You probably know churches that have been in trouble financially because it just works down the way. When families are short, they tithe less, churches have less that come in, and therefore they're not able to give as much going out. But I said all that to say this: Acts 1:8. You will not believe this, but Acts 1:8 saw a $6,500 increase last year. And all the other fundraising agencies are saying, you know what, we lost a tremendous amount of money this year. Acts 1:8 saw a $6,500 increase. And I'm very thankful for that. And the reason that is, it's not hard for me to assign that. The reason that is because of churches just like yours that says, you know what, missions is very important. And no matter what happens to the economy or whatever happens to our church or whatever, we have got to support our missionaries because they're depending on us. And so if I were to say anything to you this morning about the World Missions Offering, I would say this: always remember that your missionaries are depending on you. This is the fact. If you read in Acts chapter 13, where it talks about how the church had sent the missionaries away, those missionaries were relying upon the church, I believe, financially, but also prayerfully. And so as you begin to consider the World Missions Offering as it's coming up on April 29th, and I assume this is probably the day that you're going to do the offering as well, I hope that you will continue to support financially, but also prayerfully, because I believe they were equally as important. Because of the financial situation in the international missions, one of the things they are doing is they're putting a lot of emphasis on this mission because they need some cash flow pretty desperately, if I can say that. We had set out a goal for 650 churches that they would participate in the World Missions Offering. And the reason that we set that goal, and it's, by the way, it's quite lofty. You may be thinking, well, that doesn't sound like that many. We have over 2,500 Free Will Baptist churches across the denomination. So you think about 400, it doesn't seem like a whole lot. I mean, if you think about 650, it doesn't sound like a whole lot. But last year, only 400 participated. So it was quite a lofty goal. We are, what is it? Today is April the 15th. We still have 2 weeks to go. And we have already reached 650 678. So that's a tremendous blessing, and your church is one of those, so thank you so much. I'm really going to show you a short video about the Ivory Coast, and let me just set this up for you real quickly because the video will speak for itself. Ivory Coast is one of our great accomplishments, if I might say. Back a few years ago, we actually pulled all of our missionaries out because there was a great upheaval going on. The rebels there were taking over, and matter of fact, we had some missionaries that were inside our missionary compound that were pinned down, and we were afraid they were about to lose their lives. And the French soldiers came in and rescued them, and so we pulled all the missionaries out. You say, "Well, Brother Don, what's good about that? That didn't sound like it was good at all." Well, we started. Here's our heritage. 1935, we sent our very first missionary, and from that time, our goal has always been that we would eventually be able to turn the works over to the nationals that are there, and they would begin to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ to those around them. That's what's happening in the Ivory Coast. We're on the verge now in Panama of that same thing. We're also on the verge of the same thing in India. So our work, folks, is paying off. In 1935, our goal was so that nationals would take over and begin to preach and spread the gospel. And they're doing that. So you listen as they tell you about the Ivory Coast.
It was with the missionaries that we passed our childhood at Una. These were people who were very dedicated to the Lord's work. I learned a lot from them. They were good examples for me personally. True, I went to Sunday school to learn lessons, who Jesus Christ is, and that God so loved the world that He gave His Son for the sins of each one of us. But I remember well that at the age of 12, I really felt that I was guilty, and that I needed to confess and give my life truly to Jesus Christ. I wanted to study language or linguistics to be a translator, but taking into consideration the situation in the country, since we were going through some difficult times, there was a need for nurses. It was the idea of Pastor Amazing and Pastor Cousineau for me to study to work in the health sector. It is a noble profession and can feed a man, so it was with their counsel that I decided to go to nursing school. Pastor Cousineau and Mr. Cameron, who is a physical therapist, decided that it was good for me to come to the U.S. to do some training in physical therapy in order to help those who were operated on at Dorval. In all cases, this is going well. I want to learn things to help the post-op patients at Dorval. After I return to Cote d'Ivoire with the NGO 1040i, I will see how I can do my work to help patients after their surgery and to help other organizations. I want to use the gifts that God has given me, all the gifts. I am available. I am always ready to serve the Lord in the way that He wants. I ask that the Lord give greater opportunities, more openness, to be useful for His work and to serve with joy and do all I can for His glory.
We've got a new song that we'd like to introduce to you. We're going to sing the first verse and chorus. This is a worship song that we're going to be introducing in the next couple of weeks. So we'll play it through the first verse and chorus. It's a worship song, it's a prayer. Follow along, and then we'll repeat it. And if you would care to join us, the Lord will be blessed.
Looking for meaning, looking for love, looking for
someone they can never give up. You are the one. You are the one. Looking for purpose in all of the pain. Looking for someone to hold in the rain. You are the one. You are the one. You are light, more beautiful. You are love, more powerful. You are the light that always shines. You are the one. Looking for meaning, looking for love, looking for someone to never give up. You are the one. You are the one. Looking for purpose in all of the pain. Looking for someone to hold in the rain. You are the one. You are the one. You are life, more beautiful. You are love, more powerful. You are the light that always shines. You are the one. You came in my darkness. You came in the light. You came without warning. You came by my side. You are the one. You are the one. There's no before you. There's no too late. There's no without you. There's only today. You are the one. You are the one. You are life, more beautiful. You are love, more powerful. You are the light that always shines. You are the one. You are the song I gotta sing. You are here. You are everything. You are the light that always shines. You are the one. And I will never move on from you. And I will never move on from you. You are life, more beautiful. You are love, more powerful. You are the light that always shines. You are the one. You are the song I got to sing. You are here. You are everything. You are the light that always shines. You are the one. You are the one. You are the one. You are the light that shines. You are the one. And I will never move on from you. And I will never move on from you.
Come to you, thanking you for this opportunity to serve you and to worship you. Lord, we just pray right now that you anoint this congregation, anoint the speaker of the hour, give him the words to speak, but also allow it to penetrate our heart, not only throughout this day, but throughout the week, and give us the charge that we need face the army, to be an army of Christ and face the defender. Thank you for this place of worship, and thank you for our freedom and those who fought for us to be able to worship on this day. In Jesus' name, amen. Brother Doug.
Would you turn your Bibles to Romans chapter 12? I'll go ahead and apologize for my family. We're not able to come this morning, and usually this time of year is difficult because I have kids in school and that sort of thing. But this was going to be an opportunity they could come because it's not that far from home. But my wife is working in the nursery. You guys that work in the nursery know how vital that is, because when nursery workers aren't present, then someone else must pick up the slack. As your missions director, one of the challenges that I've had, I've been in this position almost 8 years. Can you believe that, Brother Mark? That's 8 years. It's passed by quite quickly for me. But one of the challenges that I face and my family faces is just being connected to the local church. And so often, whenever I'm abroad and I don't have my family with yet, I usually tell a little bit about how long I've been married and the kids that I have. I think you probably know I've seen my children because they've been here before, so I won't go into all of that because we could spend all day. But I was just thinking this morning of whether I should do that here or not, and I was reminded of some things that have happened along the way. I was in Northeast Arkansas, and I mentioned that I have a 6-year-old. And then it was a few years back, and he was even younger than that. And on this side over here was a young man sitting beside his mother. And when I said, oh, I have a 6-year-old named Asher Creed, he went, woo! Obviously, he was thinking, man, you're way too old to have a kid that young. But I saw his mother reach over, and correct him. And I said, don't worry about it, Mom. He's just saying what everybody else is thinking. That's what kids do, right? And we went to another church, and as I generally do, it seems like my wife, and you're going to appreciate this, and I can say that because my wife's not here, but it seems like they're always behind. Bill, you and I talked about that this morning. They're always behind. So usually we get out of the car and I go straight to the church house. Go right in and I begin shaking hands with the people and trying to get acquainted and that sort of thing. And then they come in and fall in as they can. And I did that. Come in and I shook hands with all the folks and found my place. The place I try to find where no one else is seated because we know how important that is. And so I went in, and this little old lady, as my wife had made her way in, she looks at her, shakes her hand, and she says, honey, is your daddy preaching this morning? And of course my wife, being the humble person she is, she said, yes ma'am, he is. I'll give you one more, and I'll stop. I could go all day with this, but I was at a church that I was familiar with, and my son, I made some comment about, if you may remember the last time we were here, he's just full of energy. He just goes, man, he's like a machine. And I made some comment from the pulpit about, paying for my raising and that kind of thing, and how energetic he was and that sort of thing. And at the end of the service, the people were coming through and they were shaking hands. And this little old lady that I have known my whole life, you guys probably know someone like her. She's real small in stature, real quiet spoken, and so she comes by and she says something to me, and I can't really hear what she had to say. So I'm sorry, Miss Williams, I'm sorry I didn't hear what you said. So I knelt down like that, and she said, I said, you were the meanest kid I ever saw in my life. You have no room to talk. And I said, okay, I got that. Romans chapter 12. Romans chapter 12. Romans, by the way, if you've never read Romans, I would encourage you. I would try to get you, if you don't read anything else in the New Testament, I would encourage you first of all start with the Gospels, but you've got to dive into Romans. It's a wonderful book full of rich theology. I've heard people say, I don't want any of that old theology. You know what theology means? It's a study of God. So what you're saying is you don't want to study and know God better. I do. I read Romans. And let me just divide it out for you quickly if I may, because the scripture that we're going to be talking about this morning, and I'm just going to read just a couple of verses, but we are turning a corner in Romans. Because if you know anything about worship, we like to talk about worship, and we think about worship in details of singing, and whether we raise our hands or not, and all the actions that we do. But in reality, what worship is about the revelation of who God is, and then our response to that revelation. That's what it boils down to. And what happens is when we are truly worshiping God, it truly means that we are our worship on Sunday morning, just as we have done this morning, is just an outpouring of what we have done the rest of the week. The problem we have with worship is why people are not worshiping the way that they should is because we have this mixed up idea of worship. I'm going to move on to the message, but I just got to get on this soapbox just for a moment, if I may. We got this idea that we got one side or the other. We've got living our life and worshiping God, and we think we don't have to go to church. Or you have the other way, where you say, I can live like the devil and do what I want to do, and then on Sunday morning I'll come in and worship God. Folks, it does not work that way. If you are to be a true worshiper of God, if you're going to do it in the biblical sense, and the Scripture is laid down for us, the only way it will ever work is if you pour out your life every day. And then when you come in on a Sunday morning, and you're talking about experiencing worship and the actions that we should take, it becomes like breathing or drinking water. It's something completely natural. And what we are doing, and I'm not saying we, I'm just telling you what I have witnessed in the whole world, not necessarily what's taking place here this morning. But we are so confused when worship does not work the way it should. When it's so simple, it really is. It's about revelation of who God is, and then our response to that revelation. So the reason I tell you that is we're turning a corner here in Romans. What Paul has done is he has systematically laid down from Romans chapter 1 all the way through Romans chapter 11 this rich theology about the revelation of God, about who God is and why that we should respond in a proper manner. And then in Romans chapter 12, beginning in verse 1, he turns this corner from revelation of who God is to what our proper response should be to Him. So let's read this passage. It says, I beseech you, therefore, brethren, by the mercies of God, there's your revelation, that you present your bodies a living sacrifice, holy, acceptable unto God, which is your reasonable service, our response. And then verse 2 is where we're going to land on this morning. And be not conformed to this world, but be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove what is that good, acceptable, and perfect will of God. No doubt there's not a person in this house that does not want to know what the will of God is. I know that there are many people that do not desire the will of God. They may even know who God is, but the vast majority, I believe, of people that come on a Sunday morning, such as yourself, you do desire the will of God. See, I want to preach to you this morning about the transforming power of Jesus Christ. That's a mighty big title, and I hope that I can feel that what that implies. Let me say something to you. Have you ever? I am a person that used to be. I'm not as bad as anymore, but I used to be an insomniac, and that's a big word that means I just couldn't sleep. And I found me a good doctor, and I found Andy. Praise the Lord. And I can sleep now. I do pretty good. But the reason I bring that up is because there was many times I would be up late at night, and I would see all these infomercials. And it's all about improving yourself, transforming yourself to something that you are right now that you don't want to be, to become something that you want to be. You see commercials about someone that is well overweight, and they want to be, and then you see this amazing transformation. They've lost 70 or 80 pounds. You might even see a video about someone that, hey, he was a weakling, man. He wasn't strong at all. He was flabby in all areas. And he found this video, and he began to do this routine, and he became transformed. All of a sudden, he was a muscle guy. We can think about several different ways of transformation. Some of my favorites are, I love to see someone take an old car, one that looks useless and looks like it ought to go to the scrap yard, and they take that old thing and they make it look like it's showroom new. I like those stories. And for me personally, another one is, as a young child, I had interest in horses. And I started actually training horses at the age of 16. I won't tell you how that went. It wasn't my best experience. But down deep inside of me, I really love to take a young horse that is just completely without any obedience whatsoever. He kind of has his own mind. And take him and make him something of a gentleman. I like doing that. And even in my own personal life, right? In the 11th grade, beginning of the 11th grade, I was 5'1" and weighed 90 pounds. In the 11th grade. In the 12th grade, I had grown a foot. I still only weighed 137 pounds, but I had grown a foot. So an amazing transformation. And then, when I got married, I was 23. I weighed 150-ish, still a stick. And as you can see, I have transformed. I've gotten over that. Many, many stories, and we could go around and you could give me illustrations as well. But let me just say this morning. No matter what story you can give me this morning about an amazing transformation, let me say the obvious. You will never find any transformation that is as miraculous as what Jesus Christ does in someone's life. There's absolutely nothing that compares to the transforming power of Jesus Christ. Nothing compares. You can read the very author that we're talking about of Romans. You can read Paul's writing and see this rich theology, and yet just a few pages back in the book of Acts, we see this picture where he has consented for the death of Stephen, that Stephen would be stoned. For what crime? For believing in Christianity. So we read this verse in verse 2, and it says, "And be not conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind, that you may prove that which is good and acceptable and perfect will of God." And if I were to give you my points this morning, it's quite simple, because this particular verse, it divides out quite nicely just as it is. Be not conformed. Be transformed. Renew your minds, that you may know the will of God. That's my 4 points this morning. Quite simple, quite direct, but quite profound. You see, first of all, what the Scripture has just told us is that we should not be conformed to the world. And we ask the question, why is it important that we not be conformed to the world? Now understand, first of all, that there are several definitions. When I tell you world, there are several definitions to that word world. We know that the world can be determined that it is just the planet that we live on in. The world could be determined that it's the people, the world. Or it could be, as the Bible has stated, it could be the world as in the sinfulness of the world. So that's what we're talking about, not being conformed to the sinfulness of this world. Because what the world wants to do, the world wants to squeeze you into this mold that looks just like them. They want you to be a carbon copy of who they are. That's one of the greatest things with teenagers I cannot get in my mind. I had a nephew. He's still my nephew, by the way. I haven't divorced him. But my nephew he got into these tattoos and ear piercings and all of this. And he's a wonderful young man. I would not say that he's not. Matter of fact, he's a leader in First Real Baptist Church in Russellville. And he has these tattoos on his arm. And when he first started that, something very interesting to me was, I asked him, I said, why would you do that? That's something you're going to have to live in. By the way, you can already tell there's a difference in culture between me and him. You can already tell that. I said, why would you do that? And his answer was this, because I want to be different. Really? Different. You see, if you wanted to be different in the culture of society today, you wouldn't have tattoos. Because that's the in thing. That's the fad. You see, what the world wants to do is to mold. And by the way, I'm not preaching one way or the other on tattoos. That's between you and God. I will tell you this. I had a boy come up to me, and he had gotten saved, and he was excited about it. He was so excited, he ran out and he got this big tattoo down his side, and it says, "Forgiven." And I told him, I said, "Josh, let me tell you something. When you get to be my age, that forgiven is going to say 5. Y'all, you don't understand that I'll tell you that. I'll explain it to you later on, okay? See, all the world's influences, they must be rejected. This is a mindset that the world wants you to adopt, because what they are doing is while they're saying you should not be a Christian, you should not transform to those things, you ought to transform and be like me. That's what they're saying. You see, the only lasting change you'll ever experience is that happens within inside of you. That's the only experience that you will ever have. And the only lasting change that happens within yourself will happen through Jesus Christ. I tell you this morning, the world promises a lot of things that they cannot and they will not deliver. Conforming to our worldview will bring you happiness, is what they tell you. If you'll just lay all aside, your inhibitions and all the things that you hold dear, your morality, there is no such thing as morality. There's no such thing as truth. Lay those things aside and you'll be free. That's the message they give you. Interestingly enough, when you talk about relativism, and you talk about secularism, and you talk about being a postmodernist and there not being really any real truth, there's no grounds for that whatsoever. You don't believe it. If you believe that relativism, that anything goes, there's really no such thing as truth, ask your pharmacist if that's true. Because when I go in to my pharmacist, I want to know what my prescription is going to do for me. If relativism and truth is not real, then there's no point in me worrying about what the Bible says, or the directions guide me to. You see, what the world is really telling you is that the only way that relativism ever plays any part whatsoever is if it has to do with religion and morality. That's what they're saying to you. Everything else, there are boundaries and guidelines, but unless you're talking about religion or morality. There's a little thing that's called non-contradiction, the law of non-contradiction. I don't know if you've ever heard of it or not. But it's quite effective, especially in Christian apologetics. Because what the law of non-contradiction tells us is either it is or it isn't. So either the truth of the Bible is real or it's not. Folks, there is no in between. What they try to push off on us, this being conformed to the world, they push off and they say to us, oh yes, you have one side that says that Christianity and religion altogether should be rejected. And then the other side says, you know what? What we ought to do, we ought to accept everything that comes through. There are many ways to heaven. All that one needs to do is believe in a God, and they'll find their way to heaven. But this too cannot be true. If you've ever read any part of the Quran, it's quite easy to see that the Quran and the Bible cannot be true at the same time. Either one is telling the truth or the other is not, because they are a complete contradiction one to the other. So what the world is trying to do is make you conform to this idea that anything goes, that anybody can find their way to heaven through any means possible. It's not so. Because either Christianity is true and real, or it should be rejected. There are no in-betweens. It is real. Because what Paul is telling us is that we should transform ourselves from this idea of being conformed to the world to following Jesus Christ. And as I have said before, Paul, he was a very good student of transformation. Because on the road to Damascus, when the light shone down, and he saw this man that had been taught to him, and what he believed it was just a big hoax. And there appears the man that was crucified on that cross. And yet he lived. And said through that, he went through a change, a transformation, if you will. There's something inside of this passage that you need to stop and ponder just for a moment. This word transformed is something that is far more important than what we usually give it credit for, because it's not just a change. You go back to the original Greek, and the word is metamorpheo. That's the original Greek, and it sounds familiar to you because it sounds like metamorphosis. That's where the Greek root word for metamorphosis is this Greek word, metamorpheo. So you see, it's much more than just a change. It is a complete transformation. When you talk about metamorphosis, if you're a scientist or someone like that, you understand that a metamorphosis is something that is a profound change that changes within the life stage of some organism. To give an example of that, one good example would be watching a butterfly. I know this has been used several times before, but it's so good. Watching a butterfly that is born as a caterpillar, it's hatched out as a caterpillar, and then it transforms into a butterfly. It's no longer a caterpillar. It no longer looks like a worm. It went through this metamorphosis and has become something completely different than what it was before. So the conclusion that we must come up with is that what Paul is saying here is something much more than just a change. Something much greater than just a change. He's talking about taking something that was this and completely changing it to something that looks like this. In other words, he's talking about the old man standing on this side and having a worldview of sorts, of whatever it may be, and having a complete change to where they don't look or act or do anything like they once did. A change from the old new to the complete change that Jesus Christ does in their life. Pretty profound, isn't it? See, probably most of you people in this room this morning, you know exactly what I'm talking about, because it's something that you have experienced yourself. There's at least two settings in the Bible that is similar to this. And I think this might even drive it home to you even more. In Mark chapter 9 and verse 2, the story of Jesus where he leads his disciples to the high mountain by themselves. And there before their eyes, Jesus Christ is transfigured. That word there, transfigured, is the same Greek word, the metamorpheo. He was transfigured. It was this. And he changed to something like this. His spiritual body, he went from glory to glory. He became completely different. There's another term there in 2 Corinthians chapter 3 and verse 18 where this term also is used. And it says this, but we all, with open face, beholding as in a glass the glory of the Lord, are changed into the same image from glory to glory, even as the Spirit of the Lord. Now what does that mean? What transformation are they talking about here? What metamorpheo are they talking about here? You see, in the Old Bible and in the New Testament, when you were talking about glass, as Paul is talking about, you wouldn't be talking about the same kind of glass that we're talking about today. Where we would walk out front, the glass doors that are there, if something was on the other side, we could tell clearly what that is because the glass that we have now is much more refined than it would have been in this time, in the time of the Corinthians. In the time of the Corinthians, as he was writing this letter to the Corinthians, the glass was much more imperfect. It was almost like you guys probably have seen the distorted blue antique glass. It's probably something more like that. And when you look through that glass and you look through the other side, all you can really make out is an image. You can't really make out the whole setting as we do here today. And so what he was saying is that is all going to be changed. Talking about the image of God that still relates down inside of us. By the way, there's still an image inside of God. We know in Genesis where God created man in his own image, he had something intended for us that we would be in the very image of him. But when sin came along, that image was completely distorted, yet we held just a little bit of an image of who God is inside of us. And we could go into that, but we're going to run out of time, so I won't do that. But we have changed. In 2 Corinthians, what Paul is saying is, this transfiguration, this metamorpheo that's going to take place will be from this image of God, this through a glass that we're looking that may be faint, we will be transformed into something that looks like what God intended. We will finally and forever be in the image of Christ. And we will finally, though we try so hard, and I do as well, I try my very best to be in the image of Christ. But let's face it, on this side of glory, it's impossible. He's our example. We try to live as perfectly as we can, but it's impossible. But this metamorpheo that Paul is talking about, this complete transformation, once we go from glory to glory, we will finally be able to uphold our relationship and what God had originally intended for us in Genesis. It's pretty amazing. You see, so one thing that we can conclude here is that Paul is talking about something much more than transformation or change. It goes much more than that. Much, much more. It's not a change that has been affected by any ordinary outside influence. It's not something that we can even do inside of ourselves or any effort that we can put in. It has to be something that is completely miraculous. Can we agree on that? It has to be the transforming power of Jesus Christ. You see, this is a transformation that is a radical reorientation of who we were to who we are now. It is a complete change and a metamorpheo of the heart, the human heart. You see, what he is telling us simply is this, that we are transformed, and therefore, by this transformation, or this metamorpheo that he's giving us, this metamorphosis that He's given us. We must renew our minds. If you go back to conforming to the world, we know that the world will tell you that the most ridiculous thing you can do on this planet is call yourself a Christian. Because, as they put it, we check in our intellect at the door when you think about God. What they say is that the burden of proof for us is for us to prove that there is a God. Folks don't let anybody ever tell you that. We don't put all of our eggs into the basis that we have to prove that there is a God. It's quite interesting to me that they put that weight on a Christian, and yet, have you ever studied black holes? You see, a black hole is something way out in outer space somewhere that they scientifically, supposedly, they have proven that exists. It's there. They know it. And there's some mathematical equations that brings them to this conclusion. But do you know how many scientists have seen a black hole? None. Not one. They know it's there. They've never seen it. You see, there is strong evidence for the existence of God. So we need to renew our minds and understand that God, the Creator of all things, He loved us enough that He would give His only begotten Son. You see, the human mind itself is quite fascinating. You see, the medical field tells us that they know a lot about it. They've learned so much over the years about the medical mind, the human mind. But there's still a lot to be understood about the mind. It's like a great frontier. You talk about the floor of the ocean or any other frontier, the mind is there. It's in the same realm as the floor of the ocean or the rainforest or the study of microbes or whatever you might want to put in there. The mind is in the same realm. See, what the mind does is capable of perceiving and understanding, processing feelings, judging, determining, and the list goes on and on. But it goes much deeper than that, because what the mind does, it goes outside its own capabilities of what it can do on its own. It begins to give commands to our bodies about direction. It directs our eyes and our ears. It tells our feet which direction to move. The mind guides our hands. It processes our touch. It processes even pain. And even if you're happy, you will be happy because your mind has given your body permission to be happy. So the mind is basically the hard drive of your body. So what Paul is saying here is the whole entity of who you are begins to merge together. Our entire being begins to merge once we renew our minds and begin to think the way that we ought to think. It controls what our heart feels. The mind does. And ultimately, if it controls all these aspects by renewing our mind, we begin to learn and determine the will of God. Wow. He made it as simple as that. If I can get my worldview and my mind thinking in the right direction, that I can know the will of God. See, you've been told all your life, whether it was intentional or not, you've been told or taught that the will of God for your life is a mystery. And that you have to seek and search, and you may not ever know the will of God. I believe it can be. In everything. Do you think that God wants to hide things like Easter eggs, and you have to go out and search those things up, and you may or may not find out the will of God? I believe that God lays those before us. What determines whether we find the will of God is our mind and our thinking. Oh, I know there have been people in my life, even that have come through, you know, they want to tell me they've got the market on knowing the will of God. I'm just a little bit leery of people that come through that say, God told me to tell you this is His will. Now, don't get me wrong. Don't misunderstand what I'm saying here, because if you miss this, you're going to think that don't think that God puts people in your life that can't help guide you and change your direction. And I truly believe that. There's scripture for that. In the New Testament especially, you see where the elders, when the young men in the church are supposed to go to the elders. But generally what happens here, and this is not judgmental, you may know somebody that's really been a mentor of you, that's outside of this altogether. But generally what happens here, when someone comes up and they say, God has told me a word to give you. Generally what they're trying to do is they're trying to prove to you how much more spiritual they are than you. When we get our minds, the right worldview and the right way of thinking, there becomes this maturity in Christianity. This becomes this spiritual freedom to know what God's will is. Because we have fought those things over. But on the other side, there's also some things that as we mature, we have more freedom, we understand things that they're not compatible with the will of God whatsoever. Morality is not compatible with the will of God. And as 1 Corinthians chapter 6 tells us, worshiping other things, sex outside of marriage, homosexuality, stealing, greed, drunkenness, bearing false witness, being abusive, cheating, all these things are incompatible with the will of God. And yet folks fall into that all the time. And we can go back to being conformed to the world. It's called sin. Sin does something that none of us really like to talk about. It's an ugly one. And the world would like you to eliminate that word altogether from your vocabulary. But understanding sin and how it works, it helps us understand how it also can destroy us. You know, I've been in ministry for a while now. And I've never met anybody that has been in an adulterous situation that has ever come to me and said, you know what? I started out with this affair because I wanted to destroy my family and my marriage. Never met anybody that took their first shot at their arm and said, I put that in my arm because I want to be addicted to drugs. I've never met anybody that took the first drink of alcohol and said, I want to be an alcoholic. That's what sin does. It tells you it's insignificant, it's unimportant. Conform, and you'll be much happier. See, God's will is perfect. You cannot improve upon it because it's the work of God. Jesus has the power to transform lives. We could all give testimony about that. Everyone. We can talk about our own life. We can talk about the lives of others, how they've been miraculously changed. We've all seen it. Go to a workplace and you had one guy this day was someone that had a foul mouth, and he was always in the circle telling dirty jokes. He was always there being vulgar, and it was obvious that he was lost. I mean, the next day, he's been miraculously changed. It's notable before he ever says a word. He was transformed by the transforming power of Jesus Christ. But what God is saying, what Paul is writing, and that God has inspired to him, is if you'll reject the world, if you'll renew your mind, then you can be transformed. Miraculously transformed. Then you can know the good, acceptable, perfect will of God. Stand with me this morning. as they bring a song. Father, we're so thankful for what your word says to us. And Lord, we know that as humans, so many times we fall short of what you expect of us. But Lord, we are also confident in the transforming power that you hold. The authority that was given to you because of what we celebrated just a few days ago. That resurrection that took place. God, that is why you have the authority to transform our lives. All these other gods that people claim to have, none can say that they were crucified on the cross, that they died, and they rose again. And we know, Lord, as we read the Bible, there are many resurrections that have taken place, but the difference is between those resurrections in the Old Testament and the resurrections and the miracles that you performed. These people died again. But you rose eternally, and by doing that, you proved, God, to all of us that you have the authority to transform our lives. Touch these that are here this morning. If they don't know you from the free pardon of sin, we pray, God, that you transform their lives. But also, Lord, I pray, God, that the ones that are here today that are Christians, that they might be transformers in this world, and that they can do measures that changes lives. And these things we pray.